Unit 5, Polynomials, Day 4.5. Today we're going to review polynomials. When we're talking about the perimeter of a rectangle, the perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. We also refer to the perimeter as the sum of all 4 of the sides. When we talk about perimeter, the units that perimeter is measured in is feet. Example number 1 says find the perimeter in terms of x. So if we have 4x minus 3 and we have x plus 2, we know that the bottom is also 4x minus 3, and we know that the left-hand side is x plus 2 because the sides of a rectangle are congruent. To find perimeter, we can either use the formula 2 times the length plus 2 times the width, or you can add up all of the sides. So if we write x plus 2 plus 4x minus 3 plus x plus 2 plus 4x minus 3, in order to find the perimeter, we need to combine our like terms. X plus 4x's plus x plus 4 more x's is 10 x's. 2 minus 3 is negative 1, plus 2 is 1, minus 3 is negative 2. So the polynomial to represent the perimeter of our rectangle is 10x minus 2 feet. In question B, they say find the perimeter if x represents 5 yards. Excuse me, this they didn't tell us was feet. So we are going to replace our x in our polynomial with 5. Follow your order of operations. So 10 times 5 is 50, minus 2 is going to give us a perimeter of 48 yards. Please do not forget to label your answer. In the next example, we want to review how to find area. Area is the length of a rectangle times the width. Some of you also refer to that as the base times the height. When we find the area of a rectangle measured in units, we write that as, for example, feet squared. So in example 2, they say find the area in terms of x. So we want to use our length, which is 4x minus 3, multiply that by our width, which is x plus 2, and write a polynomial in simplified form. So we take 4x and multiply that by x, which gives us 4x squared. 4x times positive 2, which gives us 8x. Negative 3 times x, which gives us negative 3x. And negative 3 times 2, which is negative 6. So we multiplied each element in the first binomial by everything in the second. We can then combine our like terms, and we are left with 4x squared plus 5x minus 6. Then if they ask us to evaluate the area if x is equal to 3 feet, we're going to replace all of our x's with 3 in our polynomial above, and simplify using our order of operations. So exponents, 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. We then want to do multiplication and division in order from left to right. So 4 times 9 is 36, 5 times 3 is positive 15. Addition and subtraction in order from left to right. So 36 plus 15 minus 6 is 45 feet squared because they asked us to find the area. In the third example, they ask us to find volume. So an example of how volume is measured is we write the units cubed. So an example would be feet cubed. They said find the volume in terms of h. So we want to take our length, which is 2h minus 1, multiply that by our width, which is h plus 3, and multiply that by our height, which is h. So if we take everything in our first parenthesis and distribute it to our second, we get 2h times h is 2h squared. 2h times positive 3 is positive 6h. Negative 1 times h is negative h. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. We then combined our like terms, bring down that last h that we need to multiply as well. So we get 2h squared plus 5h minus 3. We then need to distribute our h to everything in the first parenthesis. So 2h squared times h is 2h cubed. 5h times h is 5h squared. And negative 3 times h is negative 3h. And we just wrote a polynomial in terms of h that represents the volume of our rectangular prism. Question B says, find the volume if h is equal to 2 inches. So we are going to replace our h with 2, simplify using our order of operations. So 2 to the third power is 8. 2 squared is 4. Then we want to do multiplication in order from left to right. 2 times 8 is 16. 5 times 4 is 20. 3 times 2 is 6. 16 plus 20 is 36. Minus 6 is equal to 30 inches. And because we're talking about volume, we want to label it as cubed. I would like you to look at the following examples and explore how we can eliminate one of the three. So using what we have learned previously, I would like you to explore how we can eliminate one of the three steps to make the process quicker. So we rewrote as x times the first parenthesis. Then we rewrote as negative 7 times the second parenthesis. We distributed what was on the outside of those parentheses to get negative 7x minus 35. And in our first polynomial, when we distributed our x, we got x squared plus 5x. We combined our like terms, and the simplified version was x squared minus 2x minus 35. So you can see that if you take your first term and distribute it to the first term in your second parenthesis, we get 3x squared. If you take your second term your first term and multiply it by your second term in your second parenthesis, you get negative 4x. Then you take your second term in your first parenthesis, and if you multiply that by the first term, you get positive 12x. And if you take the second term in your first parenthesis and multiply it by your last term, you get negative 16, which eliminates this second step of the problem. So let's try our new method. If we take our first term and multiply it by the first term in our second parenthesis, we get x squared. If we take our first term and multiply it by the second term in our second parenthesis, we get negative 3x. And you are still multiplying every term in the first by every term in the second. 8 times x is positive 8x. 8 times 3 is negative 24. You combine your like terms, and you're left with x squared plus 5x minus 24. So be very careful that you draw your arcs. You don't forget to multiply, and this new method will work nicely for you. So you're going to distribute everything in the first parenthesis to everything in the second which means you take your first term times your first term, so you get 2x squared, takes your first term times your last term, you get negative 10x, you take 3 and multiply it by x, and you get 3x, take 3 and multiply that by the negative 5, and you get negative 15. Combine your like terms, and you get 2x squared minus 7x minus 15, and you just simplified and multiplied a binomial times a binomial. You can now complete your worksheet for day 4.5.